students, welcome back to my class. Today we are going to study one critical essay, Modern Fiction by Virginia Woolf. And as you know, Virginia Woolf is a 20th century novelist and a prominent critic. She is considered as one of the finest modern writers, and her contributions in both fiction and critical studies represent a freshness and shift in structure, style, and perception. She arrived at a critical juncture of time when both life and literature were in need of an honest and wholesome conveyance of realities. And taking the charge, she emerged as an insightful and incisive social critic in her writings. Taking the contemporary developments in psychology and the evolving modernist literary movement, she evolved a new way to relate the human experience in a very innovative and fluidic manner, which later was considered as the stream of consciousness style. And as one of the most original novelist and critic, she both created and evaluated literary styles and conventions respectively. We know her famous novels like To the Lighthouse, Mrs. Dalloway, etc., setting new trends. So this essay is actually in her second part of the career when she wanted to write the novels or the new novels in the new form, differing from that of the immediate contemporaries or the immediate predecessors. So this essay, Modern Fiction, the original title of which is Modern Novels, it was written by her in 1919 but published in 1921 and it is a criticism of writers and literature of that period, which is known as the Edwardian period. So here she is beginning the essay by appreciating the 18th century novelists like Henry Fielding and Jane Austen, and she is telling that their masterpieces certainly have a strange air of simplicity, and she is arguing that literature cannot be compared. So here she is echoing the similar views given by another great critic of 20th century, that is T.S. Eliot, that literature never improves. It remains same. It differs in its perception or its style of presentation, so on, but it never improves. Therefore, she is telling we do not come to write better. All that we can be said to do is to keep moving, now a little in this direction, now in that, but with a circular tendency should the whole course of the track be viewed from a sufficiently lofty pinnacle. So this is the first point that she asserts, that literature never improves, literature cannot be bettered, but it should be changing the direction. Then she is coming to the next argument of her, that is, she is telling that our quarrel then is not with the classics, and if we speak of quarreling with Mr. Wells, Mr. Bennett and Mr. Galsworthy. So she is presenting these three novelists of that particular period around her own, that is the writings of H.G. Wells and Arnold Bennett as well as John Galsworthy, the three novelists of that period, and she is telling that it is partly that by the mere fact of their existence in the flesh, their work has a living, breathing, everyday imperfection which bids us take what liberties with it we choose. But it is also true that while we thank them for 1,000 gifts, we reserved our unconditional gratitude for Mr. Hardy, for Mr. Conrad, and in much lesser degree for Mr. Hudson. So she is telling that Mr. Hardy, Thomas Hardy, and Joseph Conrad, also belonging almost to that same period, they were better writers from her perception than H.G. Wells, Arnold Bennett, and W.H. Hudson. And she is calling these three novelists as materialists because she is arguing that they are concerned not with the spirit but with the body, that they have disappointed us and left us with the feeling that the sooner English fiction turns its back upon them as politely as may be and marches, if only into the desert, the better for its soul. So she is telling that these writers, they actually have not provided the soul of the novels in their writing, rather they have written the body of the novel. Particularly, she is finding out Mr. Bennett as one of the best craftsmen, novelist with craftsmanship, and she is telling that these novelists, they are simply like the relics of their 19th century realists. She labels them as materialistic because of their preoccupation with predictable and plausible plots, detailing of exterior reality, and foreseeable characterization. In spite of their genius or excellence in some aspects, they fail to approach the inner self that she calls spiritual to make fiction new and relevant. And particularly her unhappiness with Mr. Bennett, because Mr. Bennett is perhaps the worst culprit of the three, in as much as he is by far the best workman. So, in spite of his craftsmanship, he is unable to provide, according to Virginia Woolf, the soul of the novel. That means that purity of inspiration which can inspire the mind of the reader. And he's telling that his characters live abundantly, even unexpectedly, but it remains to ask how do they live and what do they live for. So his novels were perfect from the structural point of view. But from the plot, from everything, it was perfect. But the very purpose of writing the novel was somewhere defeated, as she thinks. And Mr. Wells, that he is a materialist in the sense that he takes too much delight in the solidity of his fabric. And H.G. Wells, he is taking too much delight in providing the fabric, means the arrangement or the narratives and all that. And what are the complaints of Virginia Woolf against them? That they write of unimportant things and they spend immense skill and immense industry making the trivial and the transitory appear the true and the enduring. So they take a lot of effort in presenting the unimportant things and they are bringing out with great industry the trivial things, and the true and enduring things are missing in their novel writing. As a result, what happens? She is telling that life escapes, and perhaps without life, nothing else is worthwhile. So, this is her centrality of the essay. The central message of the essay is that when literature or the novel fails to grasp life, when life escapes, without life, nothing else is worthwhile. If the life is not there, then it is not worth of any literature or for admiration or for reading. The vagueness which afflicts all criticism of novels, let us hazard the opinion that for us at this moment, the form of fiction most in vogue more often misses than secures one thing we seek, whether we call it life of spirit, truth, or reality. This essential thing has moved off or on and refuses to be contained any longer in such ill-fitting vestments. So she is telling that here, life or spirit or truth or reality, whatever it may be, in whatever form we may accept it, that is the essential thing. But what is missing from the novels of these writers? And at the same time, she is also bringing in another idea from the 19th century, that is the organic form of growth or the organic form of writing, which was the idea given by another famous novelist of 19th century, British American novelist Henry James. So she is telling the writer seems constrained not by his own free will, but by some powerful and unscrupulous tyrant who has him in thrall to provide a plot, to provide comedy, tragedy, love interest, and an air of probability embalming the whole so impeccable that if all his figures were to come to life, they would find themselves dressed down to the last button of their coats in the fashion of the hour. So she is alleging that these writers, they are not able to make their novels evolve, make their plots, make their stories, their characters evolve by themselves. Rather, they are like the unscrupulous tyrant, providing everything as decorating something to be a monumental structure. But within that monumental structure of the novel, the spirit of life or truth or whatever it may be, it is missing or escaping. The mind receives a myriad impressions, trivial, fantastic, evanescent, or engraved with the sharpness of steel. So she is telling that what is missing, why these novels are not to be appreciated, because she is telling that the mind of man is always in a flow, is always in a fluidic state, and it receives myriad impressions, great variety of impressions, trivial, fantastic, evanescent, engraved with sharpness of steel, and so many things. But when we are representing those mind in the novel, and if we are not presenting such mind or the inner reality of the mind, then somewhere the novels are not doing justice to their characters or to the plot as a whole. So she is telling that life is not a series of gig lamps symmetrically arranged. Life is a luminous halo, a semi-transparent envelope surrounding us from the beginning of consciousness to the end. This is our theory of the psychological approach or the inner self, which came out in the form of stream of consciousness. She is telling life is not a series of gig lamps symmetrically arranged. It is not that these events are there and you depict them and the life is complete. No, it is not simply that. Rather, life is a luminous halo. Somewhere there is some essence which may be there in between two spots of illumination. Life is a series of illuminations, but in between the two illuminations, there lies somewhere the halo, a semi-transparent envelope surrounding us from the beginning of consciousness to the end. That gives us the whole consciousness. So, in a way, she is trying to present that literature must address a comprehensive approach to life. So, she is telling that uh, it is the writer's job to write the complexities in life, the unknown, not the important. She traces it out on the basis of philosophy of evaluation in general. She elaborates how earlier novelists, with their simple tools and primitive materials, they did well, just like Henry Fielding and Austen. But the novelists like Mr. Bennett and others, they have ignored this part of the uh, novel writing and concerned themselves with the body, not the soul of the novel, not with the intuition and feelings, but they have given preference to convention and materialism. So, she is telling that writers should explore the human consciousness through sensations and impressions. And it is the task of the novelist to convey this varying, this unknown and uncircumscribed spirit, whatever aberration or complexity it may display, with as little mixture of the alien and external as possible. That means she is telling that the novelist should be concerned with the momentariness, and it should not completely deal with or only obsessed with the custom or the tradition or the form. So she is telling that Mr. James Joyce is the most notable from that of the predecessors. They attempt to come closer to life and to preserve more sincerely and exactly what interests and moves them, even if to do so they must discard most of the conventions which are commonly observed by the novelist. So she is praising another novelist of her time, Mr. James Joyce, who is also known as one of the stream of consciousness writers. And she is telling that writers like James Joyce, they are presenting the uh, presenting this human consciousness through sensations and impressions. And she is telling that originality of thought and feelings are being presented in his essays. So she is telling anyone who has read the portrait of the artist as a young man or Ulysses will have hazarded some theory of this nature as to Mr. Joyce's intention. So, Mr. Joyce, according to her, is spiritual. He is concerned at all costs to reveal the flickerings of that enormous flame which flashes its messages through the brain, and in order to preserve it, he disregards with complete courage whatever seems to him adventitious. And it is difficult not to acclaim the masterpiece in this manner. So she is telling that Joyce, for presenting that momentariness, that flickering of the enormous flame, sometimes have to do away with the convention. And it is difficult not to acclaim a masterpiece. If we want life itself, here surely we have it. In this manner, we will find the life within the novel. And she is telling that in novels like Tristram Shandy of Lawrence Sterne or Pendennis of Thackeray, convinced that there are not only other aspects of life but more important ones into the bargain. So she is telling that these type of novels, they provide the experience or the perception into the other aspects of life that we are missing in the very conventional novels that emphasize on its materialistic approach. So she is telling that for the moderns, that the point of interest lies very likely in the dark places of psychology. So the modern writers should focus more on the dark places of psychology, means which cannot be defined exactly, but which is having a very changeable or a fluidic state of existence, but which is responsible for creating the essential values of us, essential soul of our very existence. And in this regard, he is also acknowledging the influence of the Russian novelists, and she is telling that the Russian influence, and if the Russians are mentioned, one runs the risk of feeling that to write of any fiction save theirs is waste of time. But she is telling the influence of the Russian novelists like Chekhov and others, it is also a very good impression on her and her contemporaries who went to explore the human psychology. And she is telling that in every great Russian writer, we seem to discern the features of a saint if sympathy for the suffering of others, love towards them, endeavor to reach some goal worthy of the most exacting demands of the spirit constitute saintliness. So, the Russians have provided that element of the soul which she is telling is by right of birth a natural reverence for the human spirit, and they have that saintliness, means that empathy, that spirit of being with all diversified forms of life. The voice of protest is the voice of another and an ancient civilization which seems to have bred in us the instinct to enjoy and fight rather than to suffer and understand. So, English fiction from Storm to Meredith bears witness to our natural delight in humor and comedy, in the beauty of art, in the activities of the intellect, and in the splendor of the body. But any deduction that we may draw from the comparison of the two fictions so immeasurably far apart are futile. So she is telling that the English tradition that she is criticizing, she is telling that they are lacking somewhere this spiritual aspect or this spirit, this the sense, the consign, the consciousness of the halo of the consciousness somewhere. Therefore, it is the duty of the modern writers to bring it back to English novel writing. Therefore, she is telling the proper stuff of fiction doesn't exist. Everything is proper stuff of fiction. Every feeling, every thought, every quality of brain and spirit is drawn upon, no perception comes amiss. That means a novelist must not miss the comprehensive reality of life within the novel. The novelist should not stick to only one aspect. If we can imagine the art of fiction come alive and standing in our midst, she would undoubtedly bid us break her and bully her, as well as honor and love her. For so her youth is renewed and her sovereignty assured. In this manner, novel writing can be brought back to its glory. So, we find that she is telling that though, as a critic, she upholds her right to judge the past with depth as well as doubt. But Woolf wanted writers to focus on the awkwardness of life and she craved for originality in their work. Her overall hope was to inspire modern fiction writers to write what interested them wherever it may lead. And she advises the modern novelist to look within and see what life is like. So, mind receives a crowd of impressions, trivial, fantastic, and engraved, so on and so forth. So, she's very much clear that the objectives of the writer in his or her creation is to look within and life as a whole. So, in this way, this essay is charting the idea of Virginia Woolf as a novelist who wants to write a new form of novel that will differ from the Edwardian novel writing, which is highly conventional. And from this essay, questions can be asked that what are Woolf's arguments against the materialistic novel writing and in favor of spiritual novel writing? Or it may be asked that what she calls as materialistic writing and what is spiritual. Is it spiritual means religious? No. The spiritual means where the spirit of life emerges through its myriad experiences, through its sensations and impressions. So, she expresses that the writer should show life and they should represent that myriad experiences by bringing in the comprehensibility of life. So, this essay also can be putting so many questions about why she appreciates 18th century writers but she is critical of the Edwardian writer, and why she is praising the Russian writers, because the 18th century writers, they were very natural in their expression of life, though in a very simple manner. But with the development of psychology and other things by the end of 19th century, that simplicity is somewhere lost, and that simplicity cannot be recreated to represent life in a holistic manner. So I think that you people will be able to answer it properly and do justice to my class. Thank you.